Hey, everybody, welcome to the latest episode of Lowdown on Low Code, podcast brought to you just about every week by Analysis.tech. I am John Rymer, a principal here at Analysis.tech and oftentimes host podcasts. And I'm thrilled to be joined on this particular episode, I think for the first time, by my colleague, Rick Greenwald. Rick, welcome. Great to have you here.
Thanks, John. Great to be here.
I'm very excited about today's episode. We have with us today Antigoni Kourou, who is CEO of NEKOD, a company devoted to low-code citizen development governance. Governance is such a big topic. And as we're going to find out, Antigoni brings a wealth of experience to this challenge. And Antigoni, we're very excited to have you with us today. Welcome.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you having me on this podcast. And it's always a pleasure to discuss this topic with two people who are veterans in this topic.
See, this is what I mean. Antigoni, most people would rather have root canal than talk about governance, but Antigoni is all over it and makes it really practical. Rick, over to you. Well, let's get into Antigoni's background.
Yeah, I wanted to start by asking you what led you to this evil, dark swamp of governance. I mean, how did you end up here in this place, which we all know is important, but as John said, no one really wants to think about it?
It was not by choice. I have to say that. So just to introduce myself as well, thank you, John, for the nice words. I'm Antigoni. I'm based in Amsterdam, Netherlands. I know that there are followers from all over the world, so I'd like to clarify that. And I'm the founder of NEKOD, which is indeed a governance platform which governs citizen-built applications or business-built applications. So, as you can imagine, this topic is very close to my heart. And my career actually has always been somewhere in between business and IT, because I studied business IT, both for my bachelor's and master's. And soon when I started my career and actually working for a company, I started on the engineering side. So I started as a DevOps engineer, and I did data analytics as well, and I did data processing with natural language processing, and that was before AI. So it was really pure Python scripting of data and emails, so text data. And later, my curiosity and my need to be more involved with the business processes made me jump on the process automation side, which was initially was process improvement and automation. And the company that I worked for, which is an international bank, Dutch bank, was just starting with RPA. I jumped on board of what was back then the RPA Center of Excellence, and my role was technical lead. So I was looking into all the solutions that were potential for RPA, and I was looking on the technical feasibility and architecture. Later on the RPA toolkit that we had, we also included natural language processing and OCR technology, and later more and more low-code, no-code tools, which brought us to citizen development. Citizen development initially for the company I worked for started as a need. We had so much demand to automate, and my role as a technical lead at that point was to say no to some of those use cases, not because they were too difficult, but because they were too easy. And being too easy means that we thought at that point that the engineers that we are going to put to automate those processes would not make up for the benefits that they are bringing. And it was a certain use cases that we thought the employees can do it themselves. So this was how we started citizen development. And it later evolved into me creating the Center of Excellence for Citizen Development within ING, the bank. And by creating the Citizen Development Center of Excellence, that's where I encountered the need for governance. And the need for governance was something that we tackled internally initially. But by doing that, I also saw that this is a major problem not only for corporate, but in all over the business organizations that are doing citizen development or low code, no code. And this is how I came to create NEKOD, and this is what brings me now to this topic and why I'm working on this topic.
Right.
Yeah, it's kind
Awesome.
of ironic that governance is something which really needs to be done proactively, but the problems caused by lack of governance are always discovered when it's too late. So they're like two different ends of the process.
Yeah.
Exactly. When we started with governance was not the first thing we had in mind. The first thing was let's get a platform and let's start.
Right.
Governance was something we discovered later on when we started to see the problem from the lack of governance indeed.
Right. You know, one of the issues the reason I think a lot of people don't like governance is they don't like someone controlling what they do, and they feel like it reduces their ability to be effective. It reduces their ability to express their ideas and their creativity. How, Antigoni, should people think about balancing those two opposing forces? You've got control and compliance. On the other hand, you have business people that are really smart and really creative, and you want to empower them. What does that balance look like in your view?
Well, I wish we had a magic answer. In my view, it all depends, like a lot of things in life. And it's up to the organization to define what is their balance of innovation and control. So we do see today some of the innovations, some of the companies which move really towards the innovative side of this, and there are others which are taking this in a very risk adverse fashion. From my experience and from coming from somebody who did governance for a bank, right? So the industry as a whole, it is risk adverse.
Yep.
There are three elements that a company or an enterprise need to consider, and that is people, platforms, processes. So the first one, it always starts with people. It is to make an internal scan in the organization to identify, are there individuals who would be interested to digitalize their own processes? Because the normal status quo, let's say, is that a business employee goes to an IT department with a request to
Right.
automate something. And I've talked to companies where this works for them. They don't want to change this, the status quo or the way they deliver software, and it's fine for them. But in organization, when there is more freedom or there is more innovation, you need to identify those people who are willing to jump in this new way of delivering apps. And once that is done, is the second part, which is the pillar of platform, choosing what is the right platform for enabling employees to innovate. And that there is also where very often mistakes happen, because very often those platforms are chosen by IT people. So they would tend to have a very steep curve of starting for a pure non-technical business employee. And the last thing is processes. You have the people, you have the platform. Now you need to set up processes on how the people will create something there. And when we mean what we mean by how is, you need to, where are they going to get trained? Where are they going to find information? How are they going to get access to it? Just providing the environment doesn't give it doesn't create citizen development. It creates a sandbox where people can do something.
Right. Right.
And I think starting with people was absolutely right. It's funny, you had talked about how citizen development was brought on by necessity for more development. And John, you had talked about how, oh, sometimes developers are really smart. But I think it's even more basic than that. The only people who can define what it means for data to be correct are the stakeholders. Period. You can't move off that space. And by the way, I think one of the issues that has plagued governance all along is the distrust that's built up over decades between IT and stakeholders,
Yep.
because the stakeholders have to drive this. It's not optional.
Yep. Okay, Rick, over to you for the next question.
All right. The next question is, I'm sorry, I dropped my notes. Um, it's so obvious that stuff has to be governed. People find this out sooner or usually later. Why do you think enterprises do such a poor job of this? We've talked about this a bit, but what's your take on this?
That's well. To start with, I don't want to talk bad about enterprises. I think they're all trying to move the needle to get started with citizen development. But I think the reason number one why it is so difficult to do governance is because it is a very novel approach to delivering software. So if since the existence of software, you are told that for a need, this is the way to do it. You build a use case, somebody needs to assess it, and then a certain IT department will build it. Yep. Now, all of a sudden, you tell the people, but you can do it yourself. And this is, it is change, right? So it is changing the way things work. And this change, in this case, it involves both business and IT and compliance and architecture and everyone in the organization. So
Right.
when we started at the beginning of the conversation, we talked about the business IT and the business IT alignment. When that is lacking within the organization, the governance will also tend to lack because
Right.
the parties are not working together. But what we also see is many enterprises have built governance with a principle. I believe it was somewhere at the start of citizen development that it became a principle, which is freedom within the framework. And enterprises, including us at ING, took this very literally. So they created sandboxes within a certain environments with very limited access permissions. And they said, there you go. Now we have citizen development. You have this environment where you can do whatever you want. And I often compare this with an analogy of, when you have a playground of bumper cars, so this kind of like a children kind of game, I think grown-ups play too, where you get a car and then you can move in any direction you want. You cannot leave the playground. But what happens there is chaos by design. So the only goal there is to crash on each other. And of course, you're driving, you're playing around, but nothing good comes out of it, as it is not really improving your driving skills or adding anything as a whole. And to continue the analogy, what citizen development governance needs to be and what organizations need to create is something like a go-kart playground. So you of course have the environment, you still have the safe place, but in the same time there is a structure. There are different tracks, there are lanes, there are rules, and there is safety gear. And in that case, cars do not bump with each other unless something goes wrong. You go in a certain direction and you improve. And this is the actual governance. So you move with a purpose. And the purpose is to get better. There is even competition on who is the fastest and who drove better. So this is what I would compare it to.
Well, some rules of the road, as if you will.
Yeah.
I love that analogy, Antigoni. That's really, I think that's really, really speaks to it. And it's an interesting setup to our next question, which is, you mentioned platforms as number two, people, platforms, process. Yeah. And a lot of platforms, I mean, the really mature ones do provide governance tools and features. Are those enough?
I would say they are the first mile. So they are definitely helpful to get started. They create the playground. Without those, you will not have a playground at all. So, so in that case, all the platforms should include the governance controls. However, in my opinion, the goal of any platform vendor is to have more use cases built on the platform and more licenses and more
Yep.
people are there. So if I'll take an example from of a use case, let's say you'd have a bank employee automating a KYC process.
Okay.
From the platform perspective, this is a great use case that you can automate a high risky critical process in their platform. However, from the enterprise perspective, this process might never go to production because it would not be compliant with the rules of the company itself, with the policies of the company itself. And moreover, it will not be allowed to be run by a citizen developer, as in their whole responsibility will be with a single person who is not a I don't want to call it a proper developer, but somebody who is trained to do a high risk use case. And
Right.
that is, in my view, the difference between what the platforms provide. So they provide the playground, but it is up to every company, every enterprise or smaller business to decide what are their own internal rules that they want to set to this
Right.
game.
Yeah.
Right.
I
Right.
refer to this as context. Every company, every organization, every use case has its own context, and governance is all about enforcing that context. The interesting thing about what you say about spreading it farther too is that the more use cases that get involved in governance, the more powerful that governance is, because it's like the hive mind. It increases with intelligence from all these separate sources.
Right.
Absolutely.
Oh, sorry. I'm gonna just do a quick commercial break. Folks, you are listening, watching Lowdown on Low Code from Analysis.tech. Thank you for being with us. We drop episodes just about every week. And if you like what you're hearing from guests like Antigoni and many others we've had on, hit the like button, hit the share button, tell your friends, tell your neighbors, tell your colleagues. We're here every week to help the community kind of advance the state of the art in their organizations. Okay, with that commercial break behind us, Rick, over to you.
Picking up from what we were talking about right before the break is talking about the different types of data that are in an organization. Every organization has corporate data, which is shared, which is used by many applications, and every organization has silos of data federated out into individual organizations, which may eventually become corporate data, but certainly doesn't start that way. How do you help to manage both of these types of data in the overall governance context?
Well, this is a huge
Hard question, I know.
that is a huge challenge. It is a huge challenge because it doesn't relate only to citizen development, low code, no code. This is a huge problem that every single department in an enterprise has, and even the engineering teams are faced with this challenge. So, especially I have to say now in the age of AI, where a lot of models are trained with data, the the data quality has become even more important issue because the way these models are trained is shown to not be effective. But from our perspective, when we talk about data, we try to identify what data tiers are there. Again, it will depend per organization what kind of data they are handling. So if you talk about financials or healthcare, you have very sensitive information that you're handling. But in general, I'd say the data would be always segregated in 3 tiers. So the tier 1 is the ERP system, the data that lives in the core corporate systems. Then in the second tier is the shared data set. So the data that is maintained by IT, is hosted by IT, but it is made available outside of these core systems. And the third type are the type that the citizen developers should or normally have access to, which is team and local data or individual data, so data that you are working on a daily basis. And that is mainly stored in Excel files, in SharePoint, so it's stored even locally somewhere. So the earliest companies do a proper data tagging and data mapping. The easiest it is to have some governance on the data. So that is my 2 cents on the data governance.
And it's interesting, a lot of times those silos of data come from corporate data originally, and then
Yeah.
they're moved into use cases and the context changes and they get modified. So here's the question. I don't want to lead you on these questions, but so you end up, I hear people talk a lot about their concern because of they have too many copies of data.
Yeah.
You know, everyone's pulling down data from corporate data, and then they're changing it to suit their own purposes. Right. Different context, different purpose. I a lot of times push back and talk about versions rather than copies, because a copy means bit by bit. If it's not bit by bit, it's not a copy anymore. And this idea that we're wasting space, we have too much redundancy, that goes out the window because it's not really the same thing. What are your views on this?
This is interesting. So I still have to highlight that I think this is a huge problem, and it's I don't think it's being solved at the moment. But one use case that we had internally that I got to work on is that at some point we had a lot of data being used for Power BI dashboards. So basically, people could transform any Excel file they had to a Power BI dashboard. So internally, there was a certain policy which said that all the data for Power BI should come from a data lake. It should not come from your local copies. If it comes from your local copies, it will remain in your local dashboard. You cannot publish it with a whole company or department because you'll corrupt the actual source of truth. So this is one of the scenarios, but I do remember that back then it was a huge problem for any financial accountant, for myself included, and because I wanted to publish reports, and it was just simply not possible. We had to feed data to the data lake, and for a non-technical user who doesn't have any idea how to feed data to data lake, it became very challenging. So going back to the data classification and tagging, I think that would be the way to do it, but also to store it in accessible places, let's say locations. And for us at NEKOD, what we do on terms of data governance is rather first of all, is identification. So we see what kind of data are you using, because if we don't know what data we use, we cannot protect what you're building. So let's say we see that you are using financial information, then we will tag that data automatically. So that's the first one, identification, classification. Then is the storage part. So where is it being stored? Is it locally? Is it in Excel? Is it a drive? And that brings the third part, which is who has access to it. Yeah. So is it only you who have access to it? Is it 2 people? Is it hundreds of people? So that is also something we do check. But can things go wrong? Yes, absolutely.
The damnable part about it is there's nothing wrong with bringing data into your silo and modifying it. As a matter of fact, you may come up with the answer that you need that way, but you just have to realize you've stepped over a line and you don't get to step back over it without thinking about some things.
Right.
Which leads to your question, John.
So you mentioned AI, which is of course, the elephant in every discussion these days. Applying AI to citizen development building tools can make development much easier. It can. But what does it do for governance? Does AI make the citizen development governance problem harder or can it help make it easier?
Yeah, you, I believe, also answered a little bit on the question. We all talk about AI. AI is everywhere. Um, and it is a double-edged sword. So it is helping to build faster. It is indeed bringing all the benefits, because it's also guiding the citizen developers on building applications. So it makes that part much easier. And also, I have to say that newer models and the better AI gets in generating applications, the more precise it will be. So we should expect less vulnerability and better quality than a citizen developer who is just starting without the help of AI, because of all the intelligence that AI brings, right? So it is like you have a senior developer working next to you while you were a junior that just started from school,
Right.
not even graduate. Maybe you graduated chemistry and you have a senior developer helping you out.
Yeah.
But in terms of governance, we use AI at NEKOD for helping us with governance. It is helping quite a lot, and that goes on the direction of generating documentation about what is there, running a risk assessment. So if you know what you're looking for, you can identify it much easier. When you have huge amount of data, AI will make the work easier. And it makes it easier to identify patterns. So if something went wrong in the past, you can try to find the same pattern on what can go wrong at the existing situation. On the other hand, of course, it is adding risk, and it will add risks, as in more will be generated, the less knowledgeable you are about what is generated, and you are not anymore in control. If until now citizen developer really drag and drop and configured all the functions, now you literally wrote a description of what you want. And AI also tends to, I don't want to use the word hallucinate, but to fill in the gaps if you didn't specify it in your request. So if you give a vague request, it will fill in the gaps to create what it thinks that you want. And that this is a risky behavior in general. And it is not only about that the quality is not good, but it is about what is it doing besides what you asked it to do. So that is one of the biggest risks, let's say, in process itself. And in my view, and also from what I see in terrain, the AI building is still on the hands of engineers. So we discussed so far that we haven't mastered governance for citizen development on low code, no code, as a basic rule-based approach. If we add AI to the game, becomes more difficult for companies. So testing it with engineers and then going to citizen developers, in my view, is
Excellent. Rick, over to you.
Well, we've had 25, 27 minutes of doom and gloom, which is to be expected talking about governance. But let's close out with a more up-tempo or positive thing. I know that you've worked with governance and your software works really extensively. Can you make some broad brush recommendations about best practices or frameworks that people can use to start this immense wrangling process, which is what governance is?
Yeah, so I think there are several methods out there. There are quite some models. The most well-known are the ones of PMI, for example, the approach for citizen development. It is, in my opinion, ideal for organizations that have a strong approach on project management in general, because it is following a certain project management approach. Um, Shell is offering also, it has made public its own internal framework. So in my view, that is more practical and more hands-on approach on how an organization can get started and scale citizen development. And they have added like quite some elements such as peer review and federated responsibilities. So I'm quite a fan of that. We at NEKOD, we have taken bits and pieces of all this governance framework, and we have created also our own framework. The way we call it is adaptive governance model, and it is basically considering 4 core areas, which is, as I mentioned also before, it is the people, the process, the platform, and we've added policies. So policies as in what are the internal risk and compliance frameworks. And it is an adaptive framework because it takes in consideration the organization maturity level, and it also takes in consideration the risk appetite. So by adjusting this factor, each organization can get a roadmap of what they should do in the next, say, 12 months, 6 months. And let's say if you're just at the beginning, maybe you want to focus on visibility, like knowing what is out there and who built what. And as you mature, you can add different controls like such as code review, data classification, or automatic risk scoring. And the beauty of it that I talk a lot about is that you can adjust it even based on departments. So if you want to be more flexible with HR, but less flexible with KYC, you can do that. And moreover, you can also adjust it based on the maturity or, let's say, expertise level of a citizen developer. There are the citizen developers that become quite experts after a while. So you cannot enforce the same controls to them because they'll be bored. So so this is the way we're thinking about it. But the practical approach also for any organization, I'd say, is bring business and IT together in a room and start a discussion. Start a discussion, 90-minute, on what do we want the governance to look like. And once you have gone through that first discussion, you have written down some of the things you want to do internally, then the next phase is to look into what framework will fit our needs best, basically.
Right. I love the idea of an adaptive framework because, as you say, organizations progress and become more mature over time, and different business processes have different levels of risk, even though they may exist in the same department.
Yeah.
It
Which
just
is
seems
what
like it just seems like governance, like software development, has to be organic because it's not static. It evolves. You talked about the challenges of data governance. Well, there's an area where hopefully people will mature, and therefore, yeah, I love that. I love that idea of being adaptive. That's really good.
and that's not optional, it's required because the whole idea of context is, as you mentioned, John, the keyword is evolve. It
Yep.
changes over time. How many times do people saying, I have to adapt to changing market conditions?
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And when does that stop? Well, never.
Never. Antigoni, it's been such a pleasure having you on the Lowdown on Low Code. We are all here at Analysis.Tech. We're all really happy that we met you, and we're very interested in your progress with NEKOD, NEKOD, folks. For if you want to go and dial it up and have a look at what Antigoni's company is doing. This has been very, very helpful, Antigoni, and thanks again for your time. And we will stay in touch with you because, well, you as Rick said, you journeyed into the dark side and actually took this on, and it's important. It's really important. So thanks again, everybody. If you like what you're seeing and viewing here, you appreciate Antigoni's expertise, hit the like button, hit the share button, tell your colleagues. Lowdown on Low Code, we drop just about every Monday. And thanks for listening in, and we'll talk to you the next time.
Thank you so much both for having me again, and for everyone listening in. I would really take a look on the other episodes of the Lowdown and Low Code. They are really great. So thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.
Bye-bye.